The research vessel Horizon drifted silently through space, its white hull gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Emma Blake stood at the large viewing window on the bridge, watching as a massive alien ship approached their position. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Dark metal plates covered its surface like armor, and sharp spikes jutted out at odd angles. "Captain, they're requesting permission to dock," called out Lieutenant Jack Miller from his station. Emma nodded. "Granted. This is what we came here for." 3 months ago, Earth had received its first message from an alien species. The Thrakani, as they called themselves, had agreed to meet at this remote station to discuss mining rights in the asteroid belt between their worlds. Emma had been chosen to lead the diplomatic mission because of her calm nature and quick thinking. The docking process took nearly an hour. When it was complete, Emma gathered her small team and made her way to the airlock. Her heart pounded with excitement and nervousness. This would be humanity's first face-to-face meeting with aliens. The airlock doors hissed open, and Emma got her first look at the Thrakani. They were massive, at least 8 feet tall with broad shoulders and thick limbs. Their skin was covered in dark green scales that looked harder than steel. But what caught Emma's attention most were their hands. Instead of fingers like humans, each hand ended in 4 sharp claws that looked like they could cut through metal. The lead alien stepped forward. He moved with the confidence of someone used to being the most dangerous thing in any room. His yellow eyes, cold and calculating, looked down at Emma and her team. "I am Commander Veltar of the Thrakani Empire," he said in heavily accented English. The translation device on his chest turned his harsh clicking sounds into words humans could understand. "You must be the humans we were told about." Emma stepped forward and offered her hand in greeting. "I'm Captain Emma Blake. Welcome aboard the Horizon. We're honored to meet you." Veltar stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment before slowly extending one of his own. His claws were longer than Emma's fingers and looked razor-sharp. When they shook hands, Emma noticed how careful he was not to cut her with his natural weapons. "Interesting," Veltar said, examining Emma's hand after they finished shaking. "Your skin is so soft. So weak." Emma smiled politely. "Human skin is different from yours, that's true." "Different," Veltar repeated, then made a sound that might have been laughter. "That is one way to put it." He turned to the other Thrakani behind him. "Look at them, brothers. No claws, no scales, no natural armor. How did such fragile creatures ever survive?" The other aliens clicked and hissed what Emma assumed were comments about human weakness. She kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a flash of irritation. "Perhaps we could move to the conference room," Emma suggested. "We have much to discuss about the mining territories." Veltar waved a clawed hand dismissively. Yes. Though I wonder what soft creatures like you would do with valuable minerals. Do you even have the strength to mine them?" As they walked through the ship's corridors, the Thrakani continued their comments. They pointed at the human crew members they passed, making observations about their lack of natural weapons and protective covering. Emma noticed how her people stepped aside when the aliens approached. The Thrakani were not just big, they radiated an aura of danger that made everyone nervous. "Your ship is well built," Veltar admitted as they entered the conference room. "Though I notice you need many artificial tools to operate it. Buttons, screens, mechanical controls. The Thrakani operate our vessels through direct neural links and physical strength." "Different species, different methods," Emma replied, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Indeed." Veltar settled into a reinforced chair that groaned under his weight. "Tell me, Captain Blake, what weapons do your people carry? I see no claws, no natural defenses. Surely you must have some way to protect yourselves." Emma gestured to the security officer standing by the door. "We have trained personnel and various tools for protection." "Tools again," Veltar said with that harsh laughing sound. "Always tools with you humans. Do you know what we call species that depend on artificial aids to survive?" "I'm sure you'll tell me," Emma said quietly. "Failed evolution," Veltar declared. "When nature creates a species that cannot defend itself with its own body, it has marked that species for extinction. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the way of the universe." The other Thrakani clicked their agreement. Emma felt the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "The asteroid belt we wish to claim is dangerous territory," Veltar continued. "Harsh radiation, unstable rocks, predatory creatures that make their nests in the larger asteroids. It is no place for soft, weak beings who need tools to survive." Emma leaned back in her chair and studied the alien commander. His yellow eyes held no warmth, no hint of friendship or cooperation. She was beginning to understand that this meeting might not go as smoothly as Earth's leaders had hoped. "Commander Veltar," she said carefully, "I think you may have some misconceptions about humanity. We're not as helpless as you seem to believe." "Oh?" Veltar's scales seemed to ripple with amusement. "Then perhaps you would care to demonstrate this hidden strength? Or do you prefer to hide behind your tools and hope we do not notice your weakness?" The challenge in his voice was clear. Emma felt her diplomatic training warring with her natural instincts. This was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation, but the Thrakani commander seemed more interested in proving human inferiority than finding common ground. The meeting was about to become much more complicated than anyone had expected. The conference room fell silent after Veltar's challenge. Emma could feel the tension building like electricity in the air. Her diplomatic team shifted nervously in their seats, while the Thrakani aliens watched with predatory interest. "I'm not sure what kind of demonstration you have in mind," Emma said carefully, keeping her voice steady. "We came here to discuss mining rights, not to prove anything about human strength." Veltar leaned forward, his massive frame making the reinforced chair creak. "But that is exactly the problem, Soft Flesh. You speak of rights as if you deserve them. Rights must be earned through strength. The weak do not get to claim territory alongside the strong." Lieutenant Jack Miller, sitting to Emma's right, cleared his throat. "Commander Veltar, surely we can find a peaceful solution that benefits both our species. The asteroid belt is large enough for everyone." The alien commander's yellow eyes fixed on Jack with obvious contempt. Another soft voice from another weak creature. "Tell me, small human, what would you do if I decided to take what I wanted by force? Would you cry? Would you run? Would you call for your tools to save you?" Jack's face reddened, but Emma placed a calming hand on his arm before he could respond. She had seen this behavior before in difficult negotiations. Veltar was testing them, trying to provoke a reaction that would justify whatever he had planned. "We prefer to solve problems through discussion," Emma replied. "Violence usually creates more problems than it solves." "Violence," Veltar repeated, tasting the word like it was something bitter. "You call it violence when the strong take what belongs to them by right of nature. We call it the natural order." He stood up suddenly, his 8-foot frame towering over the seated humans. His claws clicked against the metal table as he placed his hands on its surface. "Perhaps a small demonstration would help you understand your position here." With casual ease, Veltar dragged one claw across the table's surface. The reinforced metal parted like soft butter, leaving a deep groove in its wake. Sparks flew as his claw cut through the electronic display built into the table's center. "These are the weapons nature gave me," he said, flexing his claws. "Sharp enough to cut through your strongest metals. Hard enough to pierce armor. Fast enough to strike before you can blink." He looked directly at Emma. "What weapons did nature give you, Captain?" Emma stared at the ruined table, then back up at the alien commander. "None that would impress you, I'm sure." "Exactly." Veltar's voice boomed with satisfaction. "Nature marked your species as prey, not predators. You have no claws, no fangs, no thick hide to protect you. You are weak, and the weak do not deserve to mine in warrior territory." The other Thrakani made sounds of agreement, clicking their claws together in what Emma was beginning to recognize as their version of applause. She felt her team's eyes on her, waiting to see how she would respond to this humiliation. "So what do you propose?" Emma asked quietly. "Simple," Veltar said, beginning to pace around the table like a predator circling its prey. "We take the asteroid belt. You return to your soft world and find somewhere else to dig for your minerals. Everyone gets what they deserve." "And if we refuse?" Veltar stopped pacing and smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Then we demonstrate why the strong rule and the weak serve. But I am not without mercy. I will give you a chance to prove that humans deserve to be treated as equals rather than prey." Emma felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "What kind of chance?" "Single combat," Veltar declared. "Your strongest warrior against me. Natural weapons only, no tools, no technology, no artificial aids. If your champion wins, we share the mining rights equally. If I win, you leave and never return." The conference room erupted in shocked voices as Emma's team began protesting all at once. Jack stood up so quickly his chair fell over. "That's completely unreasonable. You're twice the size of any human and you have natural weapons we don't possess." "Exactly," Veltar said with obvious pleasure. "Which proves my point perfectly. The weak should not try to compete with the strong." Emma raised her hand for silence, and her team reluctantly quieted down. She studied Veltar's confident expression, noting how certain he seemed of victory. The alien commander clearly believed this would be an easy win, a quick demonstration of Thrakani's superiority before claiming the asteroid belt for his people. Natural weapons only, Emma repeated slowly. No tools of any kind. That is correct. Claws, teeth, physical strength, whatever your body possesses naturally. Nothing artificial. Emma's mind raced as she considered the implications. This was clearly a trap designed to showcase human weakness. Veltar probably outweighed her by 300 pounds and possessed weapons that could cut through steel. Any human who faced him would be torn apart in seconds. But something in the alien's overconfident manner bothered her. He was so sure of human weakness, so convinced that natural weapons were the only weapons that mattered. Emma thought about the long history of her species, about how humans had survived and thrived despite being physically weaker than most predators on Earth. I accept, she said quietly. The room exploded in shocked protests from her team and surprised clicking from the Thrakani. Veltar's jaw dropped open, revealing more of those dangerous teeth. You? He said in disbelief. You wish to fight me yourself? I do, Emma confirmed, standing up to face him directly. But I have one request. Veltar composed himself and nodded. Speak. I want to bring humanity's oldest companion. The alien commander laughed harshly. What companion could possibly help a weak creature like you? Bring whatever pet you wish. It will make no difference to the outcome. Emma smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Thank you, Commander. When shall we meet? Tomorrow at dawn, Veltar declared. My people will prepare an arena. Try not to die too quickly, soft flesh. I want this to be educational. The arena buzzed with excitement as hundreds of Thrakani filled the metal bleachers. Their clicking and hissing created a sound like angry insects as they waited for the entertainment to begin. Word had spread quickly through their ship about the foolish human who dared to challenge Commander Veltar in single combat. Emma stood in the small preparation room beneath the arena floor, listening to the noise above. Her hands were steady as she checked her equipment one final time. The item she carried was simple, a 7-inch combat knife with a plain black handle and a steel blade that gleamed under the harsh lights. Lieutenant Jack Miller paced nervously behind her. Emma, this is insane. You still have time to call this off. No one would blame you for backing down from an impossible fight. I'm not backing down, Emma replied calmly, sliding the knife into its sheath on her belt. Besides, it's too late now. The whole thing is being broadcast to both our fleets. If I quit now, it proves everything Veltar said about humans being weak. Dr. Sarah Williams, the team's medical officer, finished checking Emma's vital signs. Your heart rate is surprisingly normal for someone about to face a creature that could tear you apart with his bare hands. Emma smiled at her friend's worried expression. I've been in difficult situations before. This is just another problem that needs solving. With a knife against an 8-foot monster with claws that can cut through steel, Jack muttered. Some problem. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, followed by the grinding noise of the arena's main doors opening. A roar went up from the Thrakani crowd as their champion entered the fighting space above. That's our cue, Emma said, moving toward the door. Remember what we discussed. No matter what happens up there, don't interfere. This has to be settled between Veltar and me. The elevator carried Emma up to the arena floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a circular space about 50 feet across. The floor was covered in sand, and bright lights hung from the ceiling. Around the edges, Thrakani spectators leaned forward eagerly, their yellow eyes focused on the small human who had entered their domain. Veltar waited in the center of the arena. He had removed his official uniform and now wore only simple pants that allowed his full physique to be seen. His scaled hide rippled with muscle, and his claws gleamed like polished knives. He looked even more dangerous than he had in the conference room. So, the soft flesh comes to meet her death, Veltar called out, his voice carrying easily over the crowd noise. I admit I am curious to see what companion you have brought. Where is this mighty ally who will help you fight? Emma walked slowly toward the center of the arena, her boots making soft sounds in the sand. She stopped about 10 feet away from the alien commander and reached for the knife at her side. This is my companion, she said, drawing the blade and holding it up so the lights reflected off its surface. The oldest friend humanity has ever known. The Thrakani crowd erupted in laughter. Their clicking and hissing filled the arena as they saw the tiny weapon Emma held. Even Veltar seemed amused, tilting his head to examine the small piece of steel. That little metal stick, he said with obvious disbelief. That is what you call a companion? It looks like a tool for cutting food. This tool has walked alongside humanity for over 2 million years, Emma replied, turning the knife slowly in her hand. Before we learned to make fire, before we developed language, before we built cities or ships or computers, we had this. She took a step forward, and Veltar automatically shifted his stance, though he still looked more amused than concerned. While your people evolved natural weapons, mine evolved something different. We grew intelligence. We learned to think, to adapt, to survive in ways that had nothing to do with being the biggest or strongest. Pretty words, Veltar said, flexing his claws. But words will not save you when I tear you apart. Your ancestors may have used such tools to hunt small animals, but I am no rabbit or deer. No, you're not, Emma agreed. You're a perfect predator, strong, fast, naturally armed. Everything evolution could give a warrior species. But that's also your weakness. Veltar's expression changed slightly. Weakness? What weakness could I possibly have? Emma began to circle slowly to her right, forcing Veltar to turn to keep facing her. You're too perfect. Your claws are amazing weapons, but they're the only weapons you have. They can't change, can't adapt, can't become something different when the situation requires it. She held up the knife again. This blade can cut, thrust, parry, or be thrown. It can be a weapon, a tool, or a last resort. It's not stronger than your claws, but it's more flexible. Flexible, Veltar repeated mockingly. Your small blade is flexible. How wonderful. I am sure that will comfort you when I remove your head from your shoulders. Your scales protect you from many attacks, Emma continued, still circling. But they also make you slower. They add weight, they restrict movement. My soft skin offers no protection, but it lets me move like water. The crowd was growing quieter now, sensing that something was different about this human. She wasn't cowering in fear or begging for mercy. Instead, she spoke with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Veltar's patience was wearing thin. Enough talk. Let me show you what real strength looks like. He lunged forward with surprising speed, his claws extended and aimed at Emma's chest. But when he reached the spot where she had been standing, Emma was no longer there. She had sidestepped at the last moment, and as Veltar stumbled past her, her knife flicked out in a precise motion. A thin line of green blood appeared across the alien's scaled forearm. Veltar spun around, staring at the cut in shock. The crowd fell completely silent. First lesson, Emma said quietly, raising her blade again. Humans didn't survive by being the strongest predator. We survived by being the smartest one. Veltar stared at the green blood trickling down his arm, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. In all his years as a warrior, no enemy had ever drawn first blood so easily. The crowd of Thrakani spectators sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Impossible, Veltar growled, examining the shallow cut. You move too fast. Humans are not that quick. Emma kept her distance, the knife held ready in her right hand. We're quicker than you think when we need to be. Your people evolved to be powerful, but power without speed is just wasted energy. Rage flashed in Veltar's eyes. He charged again, this time swinging both arms in wide arcs meant to catch Emma no matter which direction she moved. His claws whistled through the air with deadly force. Emma dropped low and rolled to the side, her small size allowing her to pass safely under his sweeping attack. As she came up from the roll, her blade found the gap between scales on his thigh, opening another thin red line. Veltar roared in frustration and spun to face her, but Emma was already moving again. She seemed to flow around his attacks like smoke, never quite where he expected her to be. Each time he committed to a strike, she was somewhere else, and each time she moved, another small cut appeared on his body. Stand still and fight like a warrior. Veltar bellowed, his breathing beginning to grow heavy from the constant motion. This is how humans fight, Emma replied, dancing away from another clumsy swipe. We don't stand toe-to-toe with creatures stronger than us. We use our brains. The alien commander's frustration mounted with each missed attack. His powerful muscles, built for overwhelming force, were not designed for the quick, precise movements needed to catch his elusive opponent. Sweat began to form on his scaled hide as he grew more and more tired. Emma, meanwhile, showed no signs of fatigue. Her movements remained fluid and controlled, her breathing steady. She had trained for years in combat techniques designed specifically for fighting larger, stronger opponents. Every step, every dodge, every counterattack was calculated and purposeful. You call us soft, Emma said, avoiding another wild swing and leaving a cut across Veltar's shoulder blade. But that softness gave her something you never developed, the ability to adapt. Veltar stumbled slightly, his legs beginning to feel the strain of chasing his opponent around the arena. What do you mean? Your claws are perfect weapons for your world, Emma explained, keeping just out of reach. But they only work one way. They can slash and stab, but they can't change. They can't become something else when the situation requires it. She gestured with her knife, the blade catching the arena lights. This simple piece of steel can be anything I need it to be. A cutting tool, a stabbing weapon, a defensive barrier, even a distraction. To demonstrate her point, Emma suddenly threw the knife. Veltar instinctively raised his arms to block it, but the blade spun harmlessly past his head. In the split second he was distracted, Emma rolled forward between his legs and retrieved a backup knife from her boot. When Veltar looked down, he found the second blade pressed against the soft spot at the base of his throat where his scales were thinnest. How? He gasped, not daring to move with the sharp steel so close to his vital organs. Emma stepped back and lowered the knife. Because humans learned something your people never had to learn. We discovered that the best weapon isn't always the biggest one. Sometimes it's the smartest one. Veltar sank to one knee, exhaustion finally overcoming his pride. Dozens of small cuts covered his body, none deep enough to be serious, but all precisely placed to cause maximum pain and blood loss. Emma, by contrast, remained completely uninjured. You speak of strength as if it only means muscle and claws, Emma continued, walking slowly around the kneeling alien. But real strength is the ability to survive when everything is against you. Humans were never the biggest predators on our world. We were never the fastest or strongest. But we were the most adaptable. She stopped in front of him and looked into his yellow eyes. When the Ice Age came and the big predators died out, humans survived. When diseases wiped out entire species, humans adapted and lived. When natural disasters destroyed our cities, we built them again, better than before. The crowd of Thrakani watched in absolute silence as their mighty commander remained on his knees before the small human female. Some began to mutter among themselves, their certainty about human weakness shaken by what they had witnessed. Your scales protect you from many attacks, Emma said, but they also slow you down. They make you heavy, predictable. My soft skin offers no armor, but it lets me move like water around stone. Veltar looked up at her with a mixture of respect and confusion. But how did you know where to strike? How did you avoid my claws so easily? Because I studied you, Emma replied simply. Before this fight began, I watched how you moved, how you attacked, how you thought. I learned your patterns, your habits, your weaknesses. That's what humans do, we observe, we learn, we adapt. She held up the knife again. This blade has been our partner for millions of years, but not because it's the sharpest or strongest weapon we could make. It's because it taught us to think like predators while remaining flexible enough to become whatever the situation required. Veltar struggled to his feet, his body aching from the accumulated cuts and exhaustion. I do not understand how this is possible. Emma smiled at him, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in her expression. That's because you've never had to survive by being clever instead of strong. But now you know why humans deserve respect, not because we're powerful, but because we're adaptable. The arena remained silent as the implications of the fight began to sink in for both species. Veltar remained on one knee in the sand, his breathing heavy and labored. Green blood from dozens of precise cuts stained his dark scales, while Emma stood before him completely unharmed. The silence in the arena was so complete that the only sound was the alien commander's ragged breathing. Emma looked down at the defeated warrior, her knife still held ready but pointed away from him. Do you yield, Commander? Veltar's yellow eyes met hers, and for the first time since their meeting, she saw something other than arrogance in his gaze. There was confusion, respect, and perhaps even a hint of fear. He started, then stopped. His claws dug into the sand as he struggled with emotions he had never experienced before. This should not be possible. You are small, weak, soft. I am a trained warrior with natural weapons that can cut through steel. And yet here we are, Emma said quietly. She slowly lowered her knife but kept it in her hand. Sometimes the impossible happens when you underestimate your opponent. The crowd of Thrakani spectators began to stir, their earlier excitement replaced by shocked murmurs. Some pointed at Veltar's wounds, others at Emma's calm demeanor. They had expected to see their champion tear apart a helpless human in seconds. Instead, They had witnessed something that challenged everything they believed about strength and weakness. Veltar slowly rose to his feet, wincing as his injured muscles protested. "You could have killed me," he said, touching the spot on his throat where Emma's blade had rested. "Why did you show mercy to an enemy?" Emma considered his question carefully. "Because you're not really my enemy, Commander. You're someone who made incorrect assumptions about my people. There's a difference between an enemy and someone who simply doesn't understand." She gestured toward the watching crowd. "Look at your people. They came here expecting to see human weakness confirmed. Instead, they've learned something new. Sometimes teaching is more valuable than killing." Veltar followed her gaze to the stands where hundreds of his warriors sat in stunned silence. Many of them were whispering to each other, their voices filled with confusion and doubt. Their worldview had been shaken to its core. "I do not understand," Veltar admitted. "If humans possess such abilities, why do you hide them? Why do you appear weak when you could demonstrate strength?" Emma smiled and sheathed her knife. "Because true strength doesn't need to be displayed like a weapon. It only appears when necessary. Your people announce their power with claws and scales and aggressive behavior. Humans prefer to keep our capabilities hidden until we actually need them." She took a step closer to the alien commander. "Think about it, Veltar. If I had walked into that conference room yesterday carrying this knife and making threats, what would have happened?" "We would have seen you as a threat," he replied slowly. "We would have prepared for combat immediately." "Exactly. But because I appeared harmless, you underestimated me. You made plans based on false information. In a real conflict, that kind of mistake could destroy your entire fleet." The truth of her words hit Veltar like a physical blow. If humans could hide their true capabilities so completely, how many other species had made the same error? How many potential enemies appeared weak while actually being deadly? "This changes everything," he said quietly. "If humans can fight like this, if you can appear weak while being strong, then maybe you should reconsider your opinions about who deserves what," Emma finished. "The universe is full of species that don't look dangerous. Some of them might be harmless, but others might be like us, survivors who learn to be clever instead of obvious." Veltar looked down at his wounded arms, studying the precise cuts Emma had inflicted. Each one had been placed exactly where it would cause maximum effect with minimum effort. No energy wasted, no movement unnecessary. It was a level of skill and planning that impressed him despite his pride. "Your blade," he said, nodding toward her sheathed knife. "You called it humanity's oldest companion. What did you mean?" Emma's expression grew thoughtful. "For over 2 million years, humans have carried tools like this. Not because we were born with claws or fangs, but because we learned to make them. Every generation improved the design, made them sharper, more balanced, more effective." She touched the handle of her knife. "This isn't just a weapon, Commander. It's the product of millions of years of human intelligence. Every edge, every curve, every detail has been perfected by countless generations of my ancestors. When I fight with this blade, I'm fighting with the combined knowledge of my entire species." Veltar's scales rippled with what Emma was beginning to recognize as deep thought. "Your claws that can be removed and improved." "In a way, yes. But more than that, they're claws that can become anything we need them to become. Today this was a fighting knife. Tomorrow it could be a cutting tool, a hunting weapon, or a piece of art. Your claws will always be claws, but human tools can evolve." The alien commander stood silently for a long moment, processing everything he had learned. Around them, the crowd waited nervously for his response. The outcome of this fight would determine not just mining rights, but the entire relationship between their species. Finally, Veltar extended one of his clawed hands toward Emma. "I yield," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "Not just this fight, but my assumptions about your people. Humans have earned the right to be treated as equals." Emma clasped his hand firmly, careful to avoid the sharp points of his claws. "And Thrakani have earned our respect as well. It takes wisdom to admit when you're wrong." The crowd erupted in confused chattering as they tried to process their leader's words. Some seemed angry, others thoughtful, but all appeared deeply shaken by what they had witnessed. "The asteroid belt can be shared," Veltar announced, his voice carrying over the noise. "Both our peoples will benefit from cooperation rather than conflict." Emma smiled broadly. "Now that sounds like the beginning of a real partnership."